Hello and welcome back to my GM diary for From Dusk Till Dark, Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I decided I needed a drink this time because I'm so uncomfortable recording pre-recorded content. So, cheers. The first thing I want to talk about for session 1 is what I, as the GM, and I assume what the viewers and maybe even the players have learned about the characters / players' personality types. So for example, Misha Crossing's character, Nori, or Noriti, is very reserved, is very unknowledgeable of the 10 towns or how they're run or why they're there or what the people there are like, very much showing herself as an outsider. She's also very quiet and eager to latch on to others, eager to trust them. Also, we have Azawu, who is just a straight up wild card. Every good tabletop RPG party needs a wild card, and I think we definitely have that in Azawu. When challenged about his stealth abilities, he decided to throw a table in a crowded tavern with a very large dragonborn barkeep. And then the other thing that proves he is such a wild card is everybody was given 2 secrets at the top of the game and during our session 0. And I guess in my mind, I was like, oh, everyone will hold on to these for as long as they can. Like, we probably won't even get a secret reveal in season 1. And then boom, Zawu, as soon as night falls, has probably known Nyx for a matter of hours, if that, is like, yo, dude, I got something to tell you. I don't know. Every time Azawu was in action, I think my jaw was slack. Like, it's a lot. Nyx, we know, is a very cautious person. He really fought against joining the rest of the team in any sort of labeled or tangible way, and very much wanted to seem like he wasn't involved, even though everything else in the universe was working against that concept. And I think to that end, we can also see that he's very mysterious. Maybe he's hiding things. Maybe like something happened in his past where he was with a group and it didn't work out, so he doesn't want to put himself in that position again. I don't know, but we're definitely seeing through to his character in that way. And then, of course, we have Silvira. And Silvira seems like so far the most complicated member of the group, because I wrote down that Silvira was a planner, really liked to think things out, talk things through before taking action. But then there's these other moments where it's just like, whether there's been planning or not, it's just action. So she seems very difficult to predict, and I'm not sure that that's intentional. I think maybe Silvira thinks of herself as like a type A personality, but really she's a wild card in training. So I will be very interested to see how Azawu and Silvira continue to clash and or grow together. The other thing about Silvira is that she really wants to protect the vulnerable. She latches on to Noriti almost immediately, sees Noriti doesn't really understand or is uncomfortable, is confused, and immediately takes her under her wing. We also see this with the White Lady Inn owner, who's elderly member of the community, and also Silvira tries to take care of them as well and make sure that they are being fair to them and straightforward and empathetic. So that's really interesting too, with how harsh she is to some of the new members of her party, and with her propensity for snatching people's pockets. It seems like Silvira is full of multitudes already, and wears a lot of them on her sleeve. I think tapping into the characters' personalities as well as tapping into how the players play their characters is really important as a GM, specifically because it can really help guide you in what sort of game these players want. Like, for example, Silvira is a huge interrogator. She has 100 questions for every situation. So it's like, if I know that, then I'm more inclined to give little bits of information to more NPCs, because I know the likelihood of her interrogating them with or without a reason is very high. So if they have little bits of information that can provide intrigue or information or direction for the players, knowing that personality trait of Silvira's character, I can better implant that sort of story point in the campaign. Another example is Azawu, since he's sort of our wild card, and for example, just licks things. Anything, everything, better lick it. I, as a GM, can keep that in mind and be like, all right, if there's a situation where I want the characters to be at a bit of a disadvantage, specifically Azawu, then I will put something in the room that, if licked or consumed, will prove poisonous or reveal some sort of information via like a vision or things like that. And also, you know, with that sort of reactionary or boldness or, again, wild cardness of Azawu, I can also plant more NPCs or devise more situations where it's, if you draw attention to yourself, there's going to be a big consequence, and that consequence can drive the story in a certain direction, or it can provide a heightening to a scene that maybe normally wouldn't have that much like tenseness to it. So yeah, I think another thing that is important to keep an eye on as a GM is the small details that your characters reveal to you. For example, we learned that Nori has a mermaid pendant necklace, and it has made her always want to see the ocean. And that's just a small accessory. It was a small moment in time that it's mentioned, but it encapsulates this much bigger dream for her character. So how throughout the story can we weave in the storyline of getting closer to the ocean, or finding out more about Noridi's backstory that causes her to wish for the ocean? Or where did the mermaid pendant come from if she's lived in the middle of Icewind Dale her entire life? Another example is Nyx has a owl pendant necklace that he wears, and very vaguely mentioned that it was from a friend. I may or may not know more about who that friend is, but that's another thing. It's just a small accessory. It's a one sentence in a 4-hour episode, or a 4-hour session, whether you're doing an actual play or just playing at home. But it means something. It is a hint at a larger story and a larger drive and goal. So I think it's important, especially in the first episode, to try and pick up on those details, because I do think that in the first couple episodes, that is when the players are emoting the most about what their characters' main drives are, because they haven't gotten super into like the nuances of their characters yet. So they're really putting a lot of weight on the big pillars of their characters, and that's probably like, you know, the keywords of their personality types, the key pillars of their backstory, and the key pillars of their goals and dreams. So those little details can actually pack a lot of punch and a lot of fodder for you as a GM to write about. Another small detail that we saw is that Nori speaks Dwarvish, which is not particularly normal for a fur baby to know. Tabaxi. not typically normal for a tabaxi to know. And she said she came down from the mountains. So what does that mean about her backstory? Was she raised by dwarves? Did she spend time with them? How did she pick up on that language when she doesn't even seem to know how to use regular people money? I don't know. That's very interesting. And I think something you could hint at to your characters to drive interaction or engagement or push a plot point further. But also you as a GM can maybe ask the player and see, hey, you brought this up. Tell me more about this part of your backstory if they haven't already, so that I can work more of it into the story. Because it's definitely, with all the Duergar that is in this campaign, And there's, of course, the potential to speak with them or have interacted with them and, of course, continue to interact with them, as well as dwarves. So if that's something that they're focused on and they're excited that's a part of their character sheet, it's definitely something that you should consider including more of. So I had a list of random NPCs that Misha, gosh bless her, sent me so that if we had a random encounter with some NPCs in one of the 10 towns, I could use that as a reference. If you watched episode 1, you might notice that I did not use that sheet, and instead I named a character Todd. But I also think this is a great example of how things are different in the moment, or at least for me. I wanted to be quick on my feet. I didn't want to be like, okay, hold on, let me pull up this document and look through it for a name that feels appropriate. Like, something was happening in the moment and I just need to come up with something fast, and I kind of dropped the ball. But Todd ended up being like a fan favorite of episode 1, and he was probably only in the episode for a total of like maybe 1 or 2 minutes, but everyone afterwards was like, okay, when are we meeting Todd again? Is Todd going to become the big bad? And again, with actual plays, just as much as you're listening to your players, you also want to be considering the perspective and the entertainment of your audience. And so that I definitely decided, like, okay, Todd needs to come back, and we need to like know more about him, and I need a full character sheet, and I need at least some sort of backstory to explain, you know, why he was there and he was the drunkest person in the tavern that night, and hopefully move on to see like how he now feels about Silvira after coming down from the charm spell and realizing what had happened to him. So I think we got to bring him back. I don't know if he'll become the big bad or anything like that, but got to bring him back, I'm pretty sure. Another example of that was Polly's potions. I also, courtesy of Misha, had a list of like random shops that folks could pop into. Did I look at it? No, I did not. I used alliteration and I crossed my fingers that they wouldn't ask too many questions. And sometimes that's just how it is. That's just how it is. But Polly's potions popped into my head and a star was born. I think the characters had a really fun time with Polly, and I think the players had a really fun time with Polly. And I think I'm going to bring her back as a regular NPC, where she's moving from like 10 town to 10 town, setting up these makeshift shops, where she is just like making everything as cheaply as possible and trying to get the one over on people. But she always pretends to be somebody else. And I think it's always going to be, it has to be an alliteration. So, you know, like Sarah's Scrolls or something. And they go in there and it's like, obviously Polly. And they're like, excuse me, what? Hello, Polly? And she's like, no, I'm Sarah. It's kind of like that Avatar: The Last Airbender bit where they go and the one dude's running the stand or something, and he's like, hey, it's me. And then they go somewhere else and it's like him in a little, like a different hat. And they're like, hi, is it you? And he's like, no, you must be thinking of my brother. Like, I think I want to run that bit with Polly, but instead of a charming local connoisseur, it is just a very sketchy traveling snake oil saleswoman. But that just goes to show that even when you just pull something completely out of your ass, that it can still provide good content and interesting interactions and good engagement for your characters. And if you have an audience, your audience, sometimes you just got to lean into it, trust yourself, trust in your improvisation and role-playing abilities will carry you, as well as the role-playing and improv abilities of your players. Because if you have a good table, and I hope you do, they're always going to be there to support you, especially in the moments where you have obviously like obviously grasped at some straws. I think that's when they know when to be there for you the most. I think another thing that the players and the audience enjoyed was when the characters got to the next town and they went to the uphill climb, which does not have any alcohol, but it has a lot of chowder. And I decided that I would roll for chowder. I think because maybe someone asked how it tasted or something, but I rolled for it, and I think I rolled a natural 1. And so in that moment, sort of just decided that it was poisonous. And I think that is one of the cool things about the dice, is you don't need to roll them only when necessary, only when the literal mechanics call for it, but just do it to inject other RNG into your story. It certainly wasn't written into the campaign, written into the source material, that the chowder was poisonous, but it immediately made the location and the food, the experience, the tavern owner much more interesting. Why was the chowder so bad? Like, are the players going to work through it and continue to lose hit points so that they can get something to eat? Are they going to hold a grudge against the tavern owner for what he has done? Is the tavern owner going to hold a grudge against them for their response? There's so many possibilities that can come out of what ultimately was a single dice roll that went very badly. And, you know, of course, it could have gone, you know, very differently. It could have been the best chowder in the world. And even then, like, how does that change? Do they get temporary HP from that? Do they like see a vision of the happiest moment in their life? Like, there's still a lot of options with that as well that can make the story interesting. But sometimes a roll of the dice, when it's, you know, seemingly completely unnecessary, can really add a lot to the story. So there is a lot in the source material that indicates that the easiest way for the players to take down Sefik, the big bad in this opening quest, is to get him alone. After Torgs has closed down, you know, follow him until he's by himself, and then jump him, right? And that's great, but there's no way to predict, one, if your players will do that at all, no matter how much you suggest it via NPCs and whatnot. But two, even if they take your advice, like what route they're going to take to get him alone. Because there's certainly infinite number of possibilities. So when they decided to follow him after Torg shut down, I didn't want him to go back to the tavern because they had just spent time there and it kind of was awkward. I didn't want them to have to go back in there. And also they wouldn't be alone. Like, at the very least, the tavern owner is in there. I didn't want to have them go to the abandoned inn because there's 6 Dwergar hiding there, and they still were level 1. So I didn't want to subject them to that. So sort of in the moment, I decided to, in order to wrap Polly's potions into it as well, I built this narrative in that moment that I was like, okay, Torga probably told Sefik to go and mess up Polly's shop. Because while they're in town, like, even if her potions are crap, even if they're not real, they're still selling at a price lower than theirs. And so it's obviously the possibility of her hacking up their sales is still there. Torga is like not above board. Like, she's an evil person. And so I can very much easily picture her being like, okay, while we're packing up, can you just go bust out Polly's potions so that we don't have any competition for the next day or two or whatever, how long they're in this 10 town. So I kind of made up that narrative. And then that's where I had him head when the character started following him. And they caught him before this, but I was going to have his like activity when they caught him behind Poly Potions was breaking in to the back door. And there could have been a situation of like having to explain, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? And I don't think, like, the way I've been playing Sefik, I don't think he would have been like coy about it. I don't think he would have lied about it. I think it would have been like, well, boss said, so here I am. But they did catch him before that, which led to another interesting moment, because there was a moment where they were like, what are you doing here? But then it immediately went into Drax's character, Nyx, being like, hey, do you know anything about these murders? And I think it took everyone by surprise, cast and audience included, when I was just like, yeah, it was me. I did it. Role-playing as Sefik, which is how he's written in the source material, and I really loved that, so I leaned into it pretty heavily. But you certainly wouldn't have to do that. You could play Sefik coy, and anything like that. And then there was like a beat, and then Nyx was like, okay, well, I came here to kill the person who was murdering, so I guess I'll kill you. And then Sephic's like, great, awesome, let's go. And I was really worried for a second because Nyx was the only one there. And Sephic, while he's an opening quest character, I think it's like the source material anticipates that everyone is there fighting him. And that first round of combat, since everybody was still around the corner from the shop, it was just Sephic and Nyx. And Nyx was taking a lot of damage. Like, I pulled 1 or 2 punches, I think, because I didn't want Nyx to go down in the first fight, in the first session. In the first quest. And you don't have to do that, but I thought it would be more like a close call would be more fun, or even in like an ardent victory would be more fun than Nyx being unconscious by the time everybody showed up, and then they got to have the battle and he was just on the ground for all of it. So I definitely made a decision as the GM. I think I removed his cold damage that he did on a couple of his attacks, because otherwise Nyx definitely would have gotten down with that additional damage. The other thing I decided about Sephic is that in the source material, since he's like an undead that's possessed by the spirit of a frost druid, I hate when guys are like that. He has regenerative abilities, and he will regenerate, I think it's like 5 HP every single round, as long as it's fucking freezing out. And of course it's always fucking freezing out because they're outside in Icewind Dale. So duh. And the only thing that can stop him from regenerating, and this is even if he hits 0 HP, so he would never die, basically. The only thing that keeps him from regenerating is fire damage. And I don't think any of the players had fire abilities or spells. So I was like, that it'll just literally never happen. And I didn't want it to be, again, first session, first quest, first battle, and it's fucking trick birthday candles, you know? That seems more frustrating than fun for me, and I definitely wanted it to be a positive experience, this sort of first for many people at the table. So, but the interesting thing about that is that they ended up deciding not to kill Sephic. So ultimately, I guess it didn't matter, or it did matter, or, you know, does any of it matter? But they kept him alive, which, like, I love that because it immediately opens up these other windows of possibilities. Like, if you kill a character, an NPC, a big bad or whatever, they're dead. That's probably the end of it, unless there's some sort of resurrection situation or whatever. Those are few and far between, I'd say. But it opens up this door to being like, okay, can he now like join the party as like an NPC? Like, once he explains himself, are they going to accept him? Are they going to take him back to Helene and successfully turn him in? How is that even gonna go? Maybe Helene's pissed that they didn't take care of it. She's like, I paid you to take care of it. You brought him here alive, uninterested. You know, is he going to escape and get Torga and the rest of their like bandit crew involved? Are they going to feed Sephic the poison chowder until he's submissive? You know what, there's just infinite possibilities. So that was actually really exciting for me that they spared his life. And I also think a really strong choice, especially considering half the cast is brand new to tabletops. So super stoked about that. And it gives me more of an opportunity to make Sephic sexy and seduce the other members of the party. So there's that. Yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens in session 2, and I'm particularly interested to see how this decision that split the party 50-50 to keep Sephic alive is going to affect the route of their journey, but also their interpersonal relationships. So I'm super stoked, and if somebody doesn't fall in with Sephic, I'm gonna quit GMing forever, because what's the point? But yeah, I'm Vana. Thanks for tuning in to the GM Diary for session 0 of From Dusk Till Dark. We are live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. ET over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Vana. So I hope you can check us out, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to keep supporting the content that we are making here for you on the internet.